Good Monday morning, my friends. It feels like it's been forever and it was just Friday. What a weekend. How was everyone's weekend? Who did I miss? Whist? Izzy's in the hizzy. Dolores Hayes. Good morning, Connie. Good morning, Jody Landis. Good morning, Cool Gamer. Avi snuck in. What you doing, Avi? Carla Gentry's in. Crime Story Diva made it in. I think I got everybody else. Missing with Manda's been a member for 18 months. Well, thank you so much, Missing with Manda. Thank you so much. Good morning, Raven. Think I got everybody. Toots is in the house. Hello, Toots. Tell you what, it's going to be a scorcher today. I saw TTT Sharon said she was outside mowing. Be careful. This heat is horrible. Even if you're out early in the morning. You old strangers, you got to be careful out there in the heat. None of us are getting any younger. See, over the weekend, we celebrated DT Driver's birthday. It was 3 days in a row, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday of his birthday. Now, tomorrow, we're having our July members live for the July birthdays. And we have some true crime to go over as well. Kayla said today is my birthday. Well, everybody. Real quick, or as long as you want to make it, let's tell our friend Kayla happy birthday. Happy birthday, my friend. Happy birthday. This is how OJ celebrated. He had a party hat on, a scarf that says birthday boy, because it doesn't matter the occasion. Celebrating Christmas, which is Jesus's birthday, OJ still thinks is about him. Everything is about him. Every time my husband opened a present, OJ was right there putting his pheromones on it, sniffing it, thinking something was in there for him. Something we did not know until this weekend. A bouquet of balloons were delivered. And of course, I put them in the house. I cut them so they float around the house. OJ hates balloons. I mean, he hates them. My husband had to go and put him in the kitchen to get him away from OJ, but he felt better after he had some banana cream pie. All right, before we get to our hello salutations and how we do it, our friend JTB had a very bad accident over the weekend. She fell down the stairs. She's a hurting unit. Let's give some well wishes and a big get well soon to our friend Juicy Tequila Bobo. Get well soon, JTB. We need you. We need you. Mama K just snuck in. We have a lot of people piling in. We have names that I've never seen before. So let's give a good Monday morning to your neighbor. Let's tell everyone hello. I think it's very important that everybody gets a greeting. Welcome. Now, today in Discord, I'm going to go through the 48 hours that is about this case. And this case is beyond. It's beyond Netflix. This is coming to a theater near you. This is insane, my friends. It's been heavily discussed for over a decade as to what happened to not just the 4 women we're going to discuss today, but the other people who were found murdered on Gilgo Beach. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. I've said it, I've seen it said several different ways. Kelly J said, I'm new, fairly, about a week or so. Love it. Well, I started with you with the 19-year-old with the baby. I love it here. Well, I am glad you're here. So is everybody else. Gamer Lover said, what's up, my peeps? What's up is some nastiness. Some nastiness. Let me tell you what, my friends, this is just crazy. And it's been going on for way over a decade. Now, of course, there's already people saying, the police didn't do anything. The police didn't do anything. The police didn't do anything. Suffolk County was not the only law enforcement working on this. They also had the New York State Troopers, BSU, FBI, and the Behavioral Science Unit. So this is our suspect right here. There's Rex taking a selfie. There he is. Now, he did leave quite a trail. But in 2009, 2010, 2011, the technology is not what it is in 2023. Also, over the weekend, an FBI agent weighed in on how it's very hard to catch a serial killer because they're methodical, they have a passion, they have something else going on in their brain. This isn't about love, money, drugs, anything like that. So when you have a suspect that has absolutely no ties to the victims, and the victims have no ties to each other, well, they're stumped. Not to be confused with our Rexy. Nope. Our Rexy has gorgeous selfies. No. Rex Heuermann. Rex Heuermann is something else. All right, here are the victims, and there's going to be more. Right now, there are charges for the murder of Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, he is a suspect, but has not been charged in that yet. Here's Melissa. Here is Megan. Here is Amber. And here is Maureen. Now then, going to cut to the chase. All of the women were sex workers. Most of them advertised on Craigslist. And this reminds me a lot of the Craigslist killer out of Boston. Some are tied to an AOL account. He was using burner phones to cover up what he did. And anytime in these cases a burner phone comes up, well, it is sketch, sketch, sketch. And regardless of what their trade was, they did not deserve this. They did not deserve this. You know, and the police don't deserve what's being said to them. Look at the BTK killer. He never left Wichita, Kansas. Wichita, Kansas is not New York City. He was right there, going to church, going to work, eating breakfast out, eating dinner out, mowing his lawn. He wasn't hiding from anybody. Rex here was hiding in plain sight. He was going to his office on Fifth Avenue every day like clockwork. Dahmer was not hiding. Bundy was not hiding. John Wayne Gacy was not hiding. Crazy. So you've seen the headlines over the weekend. New York Post got him. Married Manhattan architect, dad nabbed. DNA from the pizza crust and his wife's hair cracks the case. Now, it's one thing to find his hair on the duct tape where he bound the women, but his wife's hair. His wife is in no way a suspect because for all of the murders, she was not home. I don't know if she was visiting family, on a business trip. I don't know. He covered his tracks, though. So they found the hair, tracked down where he works, and got his DNA from a pizza crust. Can you imagine? I bet he wishes he was watching his weight around that time, huh? This is insane. Insane. Good morning, Radio Gaga. Oh. Now, this has been heavily covered in the New York City area for, like I said, well over a decade. There was a Netflix show, 48 Hours covered it. We're going to go through that in Discord today. Matt said he should have eaten the crust. For real, Rex? What, you don't look like a picky eater to me, Rex. Eat the crust, my friend. Finish your dinner. You wouldn't be in this mess, well, had you not killed 4 people. Now, there's also a question about other victims. Other victims. If I can find it. Shannon Gilbert called 911. Now, they've gone back and forth about whether she was murdered or whether she had an accident. They released this 911 call of Shannon's several years ago, hoping that somebody would come forward and give them tips about multiple people they have found on this beach. It is horrific. Let's look at this.
Today released those tapes, hoping to help unravel the 12-year-old Gilgo Beach mystery. Today, a bit of a shocking finding. Police now say that they do not believe that Shannon Gilbert's death is a case of murder.
Now, this was years ago, but they released this, and you're going to see some pictures we recognize. You're going to see Melissa, Megan, Amber, Maureen. And by the way, the families did not know that their loved one was doing this for money. It goes without saying, it's a very dangerous job because the people that solicit sex workers, well, they're not there to save them. They're not looking for their next wife. They're not looking for a Cinderella. They want to do something nasty. They want to do something nasty.
They hope this and other evidence they decided to release today will help them solve what has been a rather embarrassingly long unsolved cases of mass murder, the murders or other kinds of deaths of 7 other people in Suffolk County and 3 others in Nassau County.
Eyewitness News reporter Kristen Thorne is live in Brentwood with our lead story tonight. Kristen.
Liz and Bill, police have been saying for quite some time that they weren't exactly sure if Gilbert was murdered or if she died in a marsh near Gilgo Beach. But after hearing these calls today, it does sound like that is a possible scenario.
No, stop it, please. Stop it, please. Please stop it. Please stop it. No.
In the 23-minute 911 phone call released by police from 2000.
Now, we're going to hear his voice in a little bit, and we'll go back to this and tell me if you think it sounds alike.
2010, we hear Shannon Gilbert go from scared for her life to confused.
Why are you calling me by my name?
What's the matter? Are you okay?
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do to me?
Let's go back to Manhattan.
Police say that's the voice of Michael Pack, Gilbert's bodyguard. Police say Pack drove Gilbert to the home of Joseph Brewer in Ocean Beach. Brewer had hired Gilbert, who was a sex worker.
At some point during the meeting with Brewer, Shannon reportedly began acting irrational.
Please, can you shut the door?
No, time to go.
Please, something's gonna happen to me.
There's nobody outside. You're okay, right?
After that, Gilbert runs out of the house. She starts knocking on people's doors. Those people call 911 too.
43 the Bayou. Some woman is knocking at my door. She says she's in danger.
The last thing we hear on the call is Gilbert running again. Police say they believe Gilbert ran into this marsh in Gilgo, which would have looked like this at the time that night. They believe that's where Gilbert died.
Right now, we believe it's a tragic accident.
Police do not believe Gilbert's death is related to the murders of other sex workers whose remains were later found in Gilgo. For the first time, they're explaining why.
In this case, she's found on the south side of the parkway. In all the other cases, they're found on the north side of the parkway. In this case, our victim called 911. None of the other cases resulted in 911 calls. She's found with her identification with her. She's found with money with her, with cash with her. There's no effort to conceal her body.
So I think the real news today is that for the first time after all of these years, we have police acknowledging that they do not believe that Shannon Gilbert's death is related to the other murders of sex workers found in this area of Gilgo Beach. And that is very big news. Police say that Brewer and Pack, if you were curious about them, they say that they fully cooperated with this investigation and they're not considered suspects in anything at this time.
But the name Rex has come up again. The name Rex has come up again. And there are other unsolved murders that they're going to have to look into to see if Rex was around. Here's one Snazzy sent me. Pamela Jerome, Bridgeport area, January 1986, which would be much earlier, but serial killers don't just get it out of their system. As you remember with Bundy, they found people way back from before he was ever on the radar. Pamela was strangled. Her body was found on January 13th, 1986 in a wooded area on property owned by the Bridgeport Hydraulic Company on Valley Road in Reading. Ms. Jerome was known to have engaged in prostitution in the area. It is believed she was SA'd before she was strangled. They have a lot of work to do. Now, FBI behavioral science weighed in on this back in 2011. A few months after the four women that we're talking about, Melissa, Megan, Amber, and Maureen, were found. And they gave a profile. All the women were wrapped in burlap. It was camouflage burlap, not like the burlap you find like at a landscaping place, within a quarter mile of each other. FBI profilers said you're going to be looking for a middle-aged white man, well-educated, well-spoken, financially secure, has a job, owns an expensive car or truck, and lives near where the bodies were found. Well, Rex is pushing 60. Rex is married with 2 children. A witness, I believe, with the Amber murder, saw him in a Chevy Avalanche. And Massapequa Park is not too far from where the bodies were found at all. He also has a very good job. He's an architect. Hell, the monthly rent alone on Fifth Avenue is like almost $100,000. It's crazy, crazy. So let's look at a snippet of when they found him, because they've been on to him for quite a while. They've been on to him for quite a while, but it was the pizza crust combined with some other things. Talk about a spot on profile. Woo! Woo!
There's been some new developments in the Gilgo investigation. Last night, a little bit around 8:30 p.m. in the vicinity of 35th and 5th Avenue in the city, members assigned to the Gilgo Beach Task Force, which consisted of numerous detectives and investigators from the Suffolk County Police Department, as well as our partners in the FBI, did place one individual under arrest, transported him back to 30 Yaphank, which is our headquarters, and he's currently in custody at this time. The case is in grand jury. We anticipate an indictment later on this afternoon, and we're going to probably have a press conference around 4 to 5 o'clock this afternoon with the district attorney and a lot of the other leadership that law enforcement has out here in Suffolk County. I do have to take advantage of this opportunity and thank the teamwork, the effort, the work by all the members of the task force, allowing us to get to this point today. It was a collaborative effort. The resilient work that was done allowed us to place somebody into custody. But once again, there will be a lot more detailed press conference later on today, 4 o'clock, out in Riverhead at the district attorney's office. I'm going to pass it over to our county executive, Steve Malone.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is my 12th year as county executive. I've lived with the Gilgo Beach investigation for my entire tenure as county executive. And I can tell you that during that time, the focus for me, members of our team, have been on bringing justice for these victims. And now here we are today with this arrest taking place, this major development in the case, and moving closer to that goal that we have all been working towards. I want the public to know, the message to the public is that we have never stopped working on this case. There are police officers, Suffolk police officers, who started working on this case who have retired.
Imagine when we get to the trial. Now, I don't know if in this area they're going to televise it, but imagine over a decade of an investigation. Like you said, we have people that started on this and they retired. Shoo! And they've been working on it the whole time. I loved it when that lady in the FBI, I think she was on CBS this morning over the weekend, and they know how people behind the screen talk about the police. And she said, when you're talking about a serial killer, it's very hard to solve. And we saw the profile. You're talking about someone, not someone out buying and selling drugs or getting in trouble with the police. You're talking about someone gainfully employed, married, 2 kids, well-educated, well-spoken. Nobody would suspect him. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Snazzy. She said this was an amazing press conference. Very revealing versus just patting of praise. Doesn't that get old when they get up there and just thank each other?
Who started working on this case who have retired now. But their efforts, their dedication, it has never stopped. Putting more resources into the case. There are people who talked about this case never getting to this point, never getting to this resolution that we see today, this development that we see today. But it was the nonstop, dogged determination of the men and women of the Suffolk County Police Department, our investigators, and our partners in law enforcement, including the Nassau County Police Department, I want to thank Commissioner Ryder. All of that work never stopped. And a message to the men and women of the Suffolk County Police Department. My thanks to you and specifically the investigators here and the team working under Commissioner Harrison. I've always been incredibly proud of the men and women of this department. This is one of the finest law enforcement agencies in the nation and the world. And I'm proud of the work that they've done here to bring us this much closer. The work is not done, and you will hear more details on that later today. The work is not done here, but this is a major, major step forward in achieving the goal that we have had from the beginning, and that is, again, to bring closure to these families and to bring justice to the victims in this case. There'll be more to discuss later. Thank you very much.
Now, I don't know if you guys have been reading the various articles that are out there. Basically, anything over the weekend I could get my hands on, I was reading. And good morning, Glenn. Hello, Bonafide. When people add insult to injury, it really hacks me off. It is not anyone's business how people make their money or how they spend their money. It's not their damn business. It's just not. You want to piss it away, piss it away. Yes, the women were sex workers. They were. Their families were blindsided by this. That does not mean that they deserve to get killed. And these were horrific, brutal killings. It just blows me away when I see that. Kind of like a few weeks ago after I got my power back and we were talking about the people that got seats on that thing that looked like a pod to go down and see the Titanic. And they're making fun of these people. And I was just like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? All right, so what do we know about Rex? He's a creepy dude. There he is. You couldn't pay me enough if you sent me that selfie, I'm telling you right now. So we know that. I'm sure to these women he looked unsuspecting and they figured he was just going to, want some hugs and probably cry in their arms. So what do we know about him?
Jim, thank you. More now on the suspect, Rex Heuermann. We know that he is 59 years old, lived in Massapequa Park, and worked in Manhattan. He was
59 years old, married, father of two, lived in Massapequa Park, worked in Midtown Manhattan. Again, he was hiding in plain sight. He was speaking to YouTubers about his architecture business. We're going to see that. This profile could not be more spot on. That profile came out in 2011.
married and had 2 children. In an interview for a YouTube show that Jim Dolan just showed us, he described himself as an architect and a troubleshooter. He was arrested outside of his office in Midtown, and that is where Darla Miles continues our coverage tonight. Darla?
Sade, Rex Heuermann was arrested on this sidewalk behind me between 36th and 35th here on 5th Avenue around 8:30 last night. And that's also where you see a line of police vehicles behind me executing a search warrant. They have been inside for hours. Now, Heuermann has been an architect in Midtown here for more than 20 years. And what is interesting about this, Sade, is that over the last decade, as they've been trying to close in on the Gilgo Beach serial killer, FBI Profiles has listed that he might be a white male, well-educated and well-spoken, and that seems to describe Rex Heuermann.
To a T. He sounds like a college professor when he speaks. Now, his defense attorney said over the weekend is when I caught it, I'm not sure when he said it, that he was bawling like a bitch. He was crying like a baby. I didn't do this. I didn't do this. How did your hair and your wife's hair get on the duct tape that was put on the mouths of the victims? How? Not to mention the burlap sack. You fat bitch.
I think it's taught me more about how to understand people.
This is a February 2022 interview with Gilgo Beach serial killer suspect Rex Heuermann about his Fifth Avenue architecture and consulting firm.
Just saw a line of cops stopped in front of the building, which is, again, kind of the norm. It's New York. You don't really think anything of it.
Suffolk County and New York State Police have been searching the 11th floor office since 8 a.m. Friday. Heuermann founded RH Architecture and Design in 1994, and his website lists major clients like Target and Nike. The indictment cites key developments happen nearby in Midtown. This surveillance photo in a cell phone store buying minutes, and the trash can right out front where his DNA was obtained in that pizza box.
From a pizza crust. And remember, he had fake IDs to meet these women. He didn't use the name Rex. Burner phones to communicate. Anytime burner phones pop up in these cases, well, you know my thoughts.
I'm just in shock to find out he worked in my building, and I could have been in the elevator with him.
Heuermann is a married father of 2 adult children. The house being searched in Massapequa Park Friday is where he grew up. He even mentions it in the 2022 interview.
One of the things I learned from my father was furniture building.
Okay.
He was an aerospace engineer and built satellites. And
runs in the family, yeah, building things.
And built furniture at home.
The 59-year-old attended Burner High School, graduating in 1981 with famous classmate Billy Baldwin, who tweeted, "Woke up this morning to learn that the Gilgo Beach serial killer suspect was my high school classmate, Rex Heuermann. Mind-boggling. Massapequa is in shock."
Patience, and I don't...
And it's a very nice area. Again, he's hiding in plain sight. This guy wasn't moving around. He wasn't... This was the home he grew up in. He wasn't far from the school he graduated from in 1981. Imagine being his wife. Imagine being his grown children. It's not like his last name is Smith or Wilson. It's Heuermann. And this interview with him is weird.
Serial killer suspect was my high school classmate, Rex Heuermann. Mind-boggling. Massapequa is in shock.
Patience, and I don't like to use the word tolerance, but sometimes you have to.
Yeah.
And it's not just with the city, it's also with the client.
Patience, tolerance. He even said, you just have to understand people. That's kind of chilling, knowing what we know about Rex now.
Now, as for Heuermann, his wife, as we know that he is married, and a lot of people may be asking, where was his wife during the last 10 years as police have been searching for the Gilgo Beach serial killer? Well, the indictment says her cell phone records confirm she was out of town for 3 of the incidents for which he has been indicted.
Wow. Unseen Thinker says he doesn't like tolerance. Big red flag. Big red flag. All right, and then you always have to look at this. Imagine being the people that have lived by old Rexy Poo for years and years and years. You walk outside to check the mail, water the garden, whatever, walk the dog, and you see a heavy police presence. You don't see ambulance or fire, but nothing. But heavy police presence. FBI, troopers, Suffolk County. Imagine being the neighbors knowing this is what you lived by. Listen to their reaction.
We've been here for about 30 years, and the guy's been quiet, never really bothers anybody. We're kind of shocked. tell you the truth, you know.
Do you know him?
Yeah, his name is Rex. He's got a wife and 2 kids. The guy pretty much keeps to himself. We just say hello to each other, and that's about it. You know, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, we're shocked because this is a very, very quiet neighborhood. Everybody knows each other. All of our neighbors are, we're all friendly, and there's never been a problem at all. Not a scream, a yell, nothing.
It's crazy. It's mind-blowing. It's, quiet Massapequa Park. Shocking. Sad. Really. I mean, to think of the victims, it's sad. It's tragic. It's not about him. It's not about us. It's about the victims.
She said it's about the victims. It is. Now, let me ask you this. Do you consider Rex's wife and children to be victims in this? Because let's face it, their lives will never be the same. One way or another, they're always going to be connected to this. Always. Like I said, the last name isn't Wilson. It's not Jones. It's a very uncommon name. And I feel horrible for them. Horrible. Now, this is a little lengthy, but I think it's really important to go through because this is the backstory. This is before we even knew Rex existed. This is before all of this broke a few days ago. This is when people were on high alert, not knowing what was going on. Do we have a serial killer in our midst? What's going on? Go through this with me. It's really important. And I'm also going to post this in the description.
We are tired of theories. Now we need the truth.
Please keep in mind that this is not an episode of CSI. This is an intensive, long-term investigation.
We know we have 2 serial killers. Multiple remains were found in different ways over a long period of time.
April 1996.
2 human legs that apparently had belonged to a woman.
So if you go all the way back to Davis Park, Jane Doe, you have 4 women that were dismembered in a very particular way.
We are on Ocean Parkway. The area behind me is a massive crime scene.
The big case that started all of this was the disappearance of Shannon Gilbert.
Police say the remains were actually found by their canine unit. Who is this victim, and are there more remains? There may be even more bodies out there. So far, 4 have been found, and some police say this could be the work of one person.
Canine searches, helicopter area searches, we involve the FBI.
I don't want anybody to think that we have a Jack the Ripper running around Suffolk County with blood dripping from a knife.
We do believe that this item was handled by the suspect and did not belong to any of the victims.
Shannon dials 911. It's a very compelling, dramatic tape. She was on the phone for 20 minutes.
Those tapes are shocking.
Why has the department not released those to the media or to the public?
So I want to be clear on that because I know there's been a lot of speculation.
I will not stop this fight until we find this killer.
We're looking at that we could have a serial killer.
This may be a cold case for some time.
Now then, question. Do you think he could be responsible for the murder of Shannon? We heard her 911 call at the beginning. There's still, most recent thing I saw, on the fence of whether she was even murdered.
It's unreal, and I'm just not.
We saw a bag with a bone sticking out.
A sunny day, April 1996. 2 brothers out for a walk on a Fire Island beach stumble upon a bag with a woman's dismembered legs inside.
I said to my brother, the doctor, I said, what kind of bone does that look like? And he said, it looks like a thigh bone. And I said, how do you know? He said, open up the other end of the bag.
As soon as we opened the bag, saw a red toenail sticking through and opened a little bit more, and it was a whole foot.
News 12 Long Island was there as Suffolk police responded to the grisly discovery on Blue Point Beach in Davis Park.
Within a half hour, they...
Could you imagine? Even though he's a doctor, him and his brother open up this bag see a leg bone and painted toenails.
There was a couple of police here.
We're looking into missing persons in both Suffolk, Nassau counties and other areas. At this particular point in time, there doesn't appear to be anyone in Suffolk County.
The case grew cold. No one knew it then, 24 years ago. But those dismembered legs with the red toenails were the first sign of the existence of the Long Island serial killer. A person who would become known as the Gilgo Beach serial killer. About a year after the Fire Island discovery in June of 1997, a hiker more than 40 miles away found another dismembered woman, this time in a green plastic bin in Hempstead Lake State Park in neighboring Nassau County.
Her head and hands had also been severed, and she wore this heart-shaped peach tattoo on her breast.
And the bodies of the dismembered women continued to be found. 3 years later, in November of 2000, a woman's torso discovered in a wooded area near Halsey Manor Road in Manorville. 3 years after that, in July of 2003, a second torso was found a mile away.
Saturday's victim had this wing tattoo on her lower right back, and police say the scrape lines were probably left by the killer. Both victims had their hands and head cut off, and there were no signs of struggle on their bodies.
Is this a serial killer?
We have no evidence that these two crimes are linked.
This is how things remained for 7 more years. Suffolk police not publicly drawing a connection between the 4 dismembered women. 4 separate crime scenes in 3 different locations, miles apart. Hempstead Lake State Park, Davis Park on Fire Island, and the woods of Manorville.
Then, December 11, 2010, a stunning development. A Suffolk police officer with his K9 Blue found a woman's body along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach. The media at first told he was conducting a training exercise.
The dog gave me an indication, which means his tail started waving. He started sampling the air. At that point, I saw the skeletal remains of a body.
2 days later, 3 more women were found, their bodies dumped in a similar way along the north side of Ocean Parkway. Police saying today they were dumped separately over the last year and a half.
Thrown out of a vehicle into the foliage, into the area that's off the roadway so that they wouldn't be seen.
It was on December 14th, 2010, when we first heard the term serial killer connected to the 4 bodies that have been found here along Ocean Parkway. We were standing here in Oak Beach at a news conference when I asked then Suffolk Police Commissioner Richard Dormer if he believed one person had murdered all of these women.
You say there's enough similarities that you're certain the same person murdered these 4 and dumped them here?
Well, look, I don't think it's a coincidence that 4 bodies in this area. Certainly, we're looking at that we could have a serial killer.
It was at that news conference that we also learned Suffolk police found the bodies not during a training exercise, but while looking for 24-year-old Shannon Gilbert, an upstate New York woman living in Jersey City, who vanished in May of 2010 after working as an escort for an Oak Beach man she met on Craigslist.
And the other victims also used Craigslist to advertise their services. Now, not to compare cases because I think it's unfair to the victims, but I am going to compare killers. Ted Bundy, when he gave one of his interviews, and you never know with old Ted if he's telling you the truth or yanking your chain, he said he had to change up his modus operandus, if you know what I mean, because he didn't want so many similarities between his victims. He didn't want to make it too easy for the feds. To me, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for Rex to have done the same thing.
Oak Beach is a gated community, more than a 50-mile drive from Manhattan. It turned out none of the women who would become known as the Gilgo 4 were Shannon Gilbert. Police suspected early on they could also be sex workers. Police Commissioner Dormer said at the time,
I don't want anybody to think that we have a Jack the Ripper running around Suffolk County with blood dripping from a knife, which might be the impression that some people would get. It's not that type of situation.
1 month later, Suffolk police officially identified the 4 women as sex workers who vanished between 2007 and 2010. 25-year-old Maureen Brainerd Barnes reported missing from Norwich, Connecticut, July 2007. 24-year-old Melissa Bartholomew reported missing from the Bronx, July 2009. 22-year-old Megan Waterman reported missing in Maine, June 2010. And 27-year-old Amber Lynn Costello, last seen in North Babylon, Long Island, September 2010. But still, no sign of Shannan Gilbert, and her family, represented by attorney John Ray, kept the pressure on the Suffolk Police Department.
The killer still lurks.
I'm gonna find Shannan if it takes me the rest of my lifetime.
Gilbert and her family, represented by attorney John Ray, kept the pressure on the Suffolk Police Department.
The killer.
Off topic. My husband could pull off this outfit. I'm serious. The hat and all. Slamming outfit. Snazzy said he was stalking a woman in a park before the arrest earlier in the month. He wasn't done. And I do not believe that this ends with Melissa, Megan, Amber, and Maureen. Now, he has not been charged with Maureen. I have to be clear about that he is the prime suspect. Now, just because others weren't found with the burlap doesn't mean he just didn't get sloppy.
Still lurks.
I'm gonna find Shannan if it takes me the rest of my lifetime.
Time of 2010, I was the chief of detectives of the Suffolk County Police Department. I was reluctant to do this interview.
Earlier this year, Dominic Varone, who is now retired, agreed to speak with me in this rare one-on-one interview about the Gilgo Beach serial killer investigation that he oversaw.
What were your thoughts when, okay, so one body was found and you realized it wasn't Shannan Gilbert?
Surprise. Shock, surprise. We were all convinced that this was Shannan Gilbert. I do know that we did an exhaustive search for Shannan, a whole year, canine searches, helicopter aerial searches. We involved the FBI. At what point, almost the entire team of investigators flew up from the Behavioral Analysis Unit in Quantico, Virginia.
Gilbert was finally found in December 2011, a full year after the Gilgo 4. During the search for Gilbert, a total of 10 sets of other human remains were found along Ocean Parkway, including the body of an Asian male and a female toddler.
The area in and around Gilgo Beach has been used to discard human remains for some period of time.
DNA then linked some of the newly discovered body parts back to the 4 dismembered women from the late 90s and early 2000s.
A skull found in Nassau, part of the woman whose legs were found on Fire Island. Arms with gold jewelry, part of the woman with the peach tattoo. The toddler determined to be her child. And finally, a head and hands linked to the 2 Manorville torsos.
A lot of questions still remain as to how many serial killers do we have. And certainly that cluster, that close group, we know that was one serial killer. It becomes more controversy when you look at the male who was found nearby and killed in another.
I was muted, sorry. From what I've heard, and I believe everything I read on the internet, serial killers have a type. If we look at Melissa, Megan, Amber, and Maureen, they're within the same age range. They're all very petite. But a toddler and an Asian male, so like what he said earlier in this, you could have 2 serial killers. It's bad enough to have 1 in your hood, but 2?
other manner. In almost all of these cases, these victims were dead before it was even reported to the police that they were missing. Shannon was an exception.
So what did happen to Shannon Gilbert the last night she was seen alive in May 2010? A man named Michael Pack had driven her to the Oak Beach home of the man who hired her, Joseph Brewer. But likely Gilbert's final moments were captured on an almost 20-minute frantic 911 recording as she ran from Brewer's home.
It was initially for a 2-hour session. They extended it to a 4-hour session. Sometime in that morning, things were not going well. Brewer wanted her out of the house, woke up Michael Pack. While this is going on, Shannon dials 911. We believe she then stumbles down the stairs and runs. And she didn't know where she was. She sounded disoriented.
Neighbors told us she started knocking on their doors.
Was she running for that house because she was afraid of something?
She was afraid of someone.
She looks at him like she's in a trance, and then she runs off.
Barone says Michael Pack knew police were on the way and drove off without Gilbert.
That's critical. They are not aware of that 18-minute phone call that the state police have. They search the area. Michael Pack, no vehicle is found. Had Michael Pack stayed there, and perhaps Shannon Gilbert could have been found and located.
Gilbert's autopsy was inconclusive. Over the next few years, there was debate over whether Gilbert was killed or drowned in the marsh, as suggested by Police Commissioner Dormer. But after 2011, Suffolk police refused to publicly discuss the case. Barone was out as the chief of detectives when James Burke became the new police chief.
Immediately after we were pushed out at the end of 2011, they kind of put a cloak of secrecy over the whole thing, which I think was not good. It inhibits public assistance.
And that cloak of secrecy surrounding the case lasted until now. 2020 saw the biggest developments yet in this investigation.
Why are you speaking with us now?
We should really be relying on the public. The thought is somebody out there knows something.
Mr. Brewer, it's News 12. Can we talk to you?
Dr. Hackett is right at the center of it all.
James Burke and Dr. Peter Hackett were in connection with each other.
48-year-old John Vitroloff of Manorville was arraigned today, charged with murdering 2 women. Suffolk District Attorney Tom Spoda says there could be more victims out there. It's been nearly a decade of suspicion around the Gilgo Beach unsolved murder.
And you know how much Rex thought he was out of the woods. To get this off the table, they're just going to connect Melissa, Megan, Amber, and Maureen with this other dude. Well, they didn't. They had somebody else's DNA. They couldn't. And his searches, which we're going to get to, are creepy. Rex had CP on his computer, heavily was researching the case. No shock there. Murder porn? Really? Really? Taunting the victims' families, of course, with sock accounts, and was very invested into who their family members were. He is one sick ticket, allegedly.
There was also secrecy about the case under Suffolk Police Chief James Burke, his refusal to work with the FBI, leading to cries of a cover-up.
He could pretty much do whatever he wanted with regard to that investigation.
In the fall of 2015, there was one public news conference when Tim Sini became the new police commissioner.
Bringing the FBI to the table with all of its expertise and resources is a step in the right direction.
But then nothing publicly until January of 2020. The current police commissioner, Geraldine Hart, releasing never-seen-before evidence, a belt found at one of the original crime scenes.
We do believe that this item was handled by the suspect and did not belong to any of the victims.
Police also sent DNA from the still unidentified victims to the FBI for familial DNA and genetic genealogy, techniques not approved at the time by the New York State crime labs.
If they're identified and their lives then can be traced, and we can see perhaps a history, a connection between one and another.
Then in May, the biggest development yet in this case. The woman known as Manorville Jane Doe had been ID'd 20 years after her torso was found.
Valerie Mack, who was 24 years old in 2000 when she went missing. She was working as an escort in Philadelphia. Family members last saw her in the spring or summer of 2000 in the area of Port Republic, New Jersey. She was never reported missing.
That really was a boost to the investigation. It definitely gave us new leads to follow and a new timeline to establish.
Commissioner Hart recently sat down with me for a one-on-one interview about the unsolved serial killings. I was given an hour of her time, the most access I've ever been granted to a top police official on this case in the 17 years that I've been covering it.
Why are you speaking about this now?
The decision was made. This is really kind of a different stage we should enter now. We should really be relying on the public.
Hart has a unique perspective on the investigation. When the Gilgo Four were found, she was with the FBI. She told me without hesitation, the FBI was blocked from the case from 2012 to late 2015.
There was definitely an intentional decision made by both the district attorney at the time, Tom Spoda, and the administration that included Jim Burke to keep the FBI out of the kind of the heart of the investigation.
Why was the decision made, do you know, to keep the FBI out of the investigation?
It's hard to know. My viewpoint is that any investigation benefits from having as many people at the table.
Police Chief James Burke was arrested by the FBI in December of 2015 and pled guilty to beating a suspect in an unrelated case. Former Suffolk District Attorney Tom Spoda later convicted at federal trial for covering up for Burke in that case. And at that trial, jurors also heard testimony that Spoda promoted Burke over the years, despite knowing he had been caught having sex with a prostitute in his police car.
Today, Suffolk County Police Chief James Burke finds himself on the opposite end of the very laws he was sworn to uphold.
Burke has never been named a suspect by the Suffolk Police Department in the Gilgo killings. Neither has John Bitroff, Joseph Brewer, or Dr. Peter Hackett. Although Gilbert's family attorney, John Ray, believes Hackett is responsible. Hackett was thrown into the spotlight when he called Shannon's mother days after she vanished. Mary Gilbert told reporters Hackett said he ran a home for wayward girls, and Hackett initially denied calling Mary to News 12.
I didn't I returned some calls. I never saw Shannon Gilbert.
Phone records later proved otherwise. Hackett is still facing a civil lawsuit by Gilbert's estate. Here's what Hackett's attorney says about it now.
Dr. Hackett, when we spoke to him, he denied calling Mary Gilbert. Why did he do that?
Dr. Hackett, first of all, got confused at one point between the deceased and the mother. And he did speak to the mother. He never spoke to the deceased. And he was concerned about the mother, saying, listen, there's a report about that she's missing, and she was acting rather irrationally that night.
What do you say to those ongoing accusations?
They're despicable. Mr. Hackett, Dr. Hackett, has never killed anyone, and there is no evidence linking him to the death of this poor girl.
As part of his civil suit, attorney John Ray fought the Suffolk Police Department in court and won, receiving a copy of the 911 recordings from Gilbert's last known night alive. A judge has barred him from speaking specifically about what's on the tape. He has demanded, though, that police release it to the media.
Those tapes are shocking.
Why has the department not released those to the media or to the public?
Right. So I want to be clear on that because I know there's been a lot of speculation that's come up around this. We are prohibited by law from releasing 911 tapes to the public. So that's not anything that's ambiguous.
But would those 911 tapes make a difference? Investigators have already heard them, including Dominic Barone, who, as I told you, was chief of detectives and in charge of the case in 2010 and 2011.
It's a very compelling, dramatic tape, and it will certainly fan the flames that Shannon was murdered. I strongly believe, based on the background sounds and listening to that tape over and over again, that she was just irrational, and she was just in an irrational, emotional state, and I don't think, that someone was trying to kill her. it cannot be ruled out.
Her death was ruled by the medical examiner to be undetermined. So therefore, we're open to the idea that it could have been a murder. We're open to the idea that it could have been accidental.
The bottom line, will this case ever be solved?
Is there a suspect?
So no, we do not have a suspect now, but I do not comment on whether somebody was or somebody wasn't a suspect. So that's something I would go into. But we certainly do not have anybody that we're looking to arrest anytime in the immediate future.
Can you say that the department obviously has investigated numerous people over the years
Certainly.
and run down those leads?
Certainly. And that's an ongoing process.
This may be a cold case for some time.
No suspects, no arrests, and as time ticks away, memories fade.
It's something that we hope is resolved at some point in some time.
So what's next? So far, Suffolk police have put out a total of 4 photos of a belt they believe was touched by the killer.
We have received, a number of tips on that. And we tracked them all down, traced them all down.
There are still 4 unidentified victims with DNA that may be too degraded to be useful. Commissioner Hart says the public is key to solving these murders.
We need to give them information. The hope is that something triggers inside them.
A majority of the victims were lured to Long Island and killed during the summer months.
Look at the times that the people were last seen and when they were murdered, and think of any people in their lives, husbands, boyfriends, or relatives, or somebody that may have had the opportunity or the means.
But deliver us from evil.
Amen.
You think about just, human nature. Something, might strike you as odd.
Do you think that the killer or killers could still be alive and living on Long Island?
We certainly don't have any reason to believe that now. And the thought is, is this individual dead? Is this individual incarcerated? There's no reason to believe that they're continuing to kill people in this area.
She should have listened to the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This police commissioner's had her own problems, okay? She's had her own problems. Not going to get off topic on that. Should have listened to the FBI because they were spot on. Middle-aged, probably married, or has a serious girlfriend. More than likely a father, white, gainfully employed, financially stable, owns an expensive car or truck. Still in the area. That was their profile. Now listen to her. Oh, they could be incarcerated or deceased. I tell you what, little dogs don't like when the big dogs get in the pen. It's an ego trip. Listen to her again. That shit makes me so mad.
To believe that now, and the thought is, is this individual dead? Is this individual incarcerated? There's no reason to believe that they're continuing to kill people in this area.
Will this case ever be solved?
So I can tell you that we are committed to continuing to do everything that we can to make sure that we bring justice to the families of these victims. It's almost generational now because these women, some of them had children, and they're teenagers now and suffering, kind of thinking what happened to their mother. And I can't imagine that kind of pain. Not to know what happened to your mother must be torture.
Perhaps the killer himself could come forth. Maybe it's about time he do that.
Crazy how long this area has been dealing with this. And some people say, well, it's New York. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Trust me, I get it. But a serial killer is a little different. Some people say, how did the wife not know? Well, I mean, Ted Bundy's girlfriend didn't know. John Wayne Gacy's friends didn't know. People thought Dahmer was weird, but nobody's going to wrap their mind around this. Extra AF said, who knows how many could have been saved if they hadn't minimized it. For sure. Well, since they weren't, well, you heard her composure. Good point, Mama K. BTK's wife didn't know. The FBI was still on it, even though they didn't want to cooperate with them. Now, they got new people in that went full force and cooperated with the FBI. Lisa says, how do we know the wife didn't know? For each of the murders, she wasn't in town. And I just don't think with his demeanor and how cold he is, he would have ever let on that he had anything to do with it. I'm sure by the time that she got back from vacation, work trip, visiting family, or whatever, he had everything back to normal. All right. Several years ago, serial killer Joel Rifkin weighed in and spoke about the killings on the beach. And it is common for the FBI to go to other serial killers. It's one of the ways they found the Golden State Killer. Again, somebody that was hiding in plain sight, more than plain sight, that went undetected for many, many years. So this creep of the week spoke with the FBI and media about this situation. Listen to this. It is chilling.
Calvi takes us inside the mind of a killer.
Certain things are very hard to stop.
An addiction to murder. Joel Rifkin terrorized the city over a 4-year span, killing one woman after another with his bare hands.
You think of people as things.
And now a new killer may be following in his murderous footsteps.
There's like a whole little graveyard going on down there.
The beach off Ocean Parkway on Long Island, the final resting place of 4 women found murdered.
We could have a serial killer.
It happened last month. It is a scene eerily similar to a case 4 years ago just outside Atlantic City.
There's a madman out here.
There, just a mile from the beach in a drainage ditch, 4 women are found dead, strangled. 4 women in Atlantic City, 4 women on Long Island, 4 years apart, all unsolved. Could crimes of the past offer a clue? The year was 1990. The year the murderous rampage of notorious Long Island serial killer Joel Rifkin came to an end.
A brutal, savage, murderous attack.
In maximum security prison for 16 years now, Joel Rifkin spoke with me in detail about his killing spree and the 2 unsolved now. Rifkin's victims totaled 17, all of them prostitutes.
Drug-addicted, disease-carrying vermin.
Okay. And that's how they look at it. That's how these killers look at it. I'm going to replay that. The Craigslist killer said something similar. Vermin. Rats in the street. Drug addicted. Bad mothers.
Drug-addicted, disease-carrying vermin is the lie I told myself.
Unlike the groups of 4 discovered on Long Island and in Atlantic City, Joel Rifkin told me he disposed of his bodies in 3s.
There were mini clusters, little, sets of 3. 3 were dismembered, 3 were in oil drums. Some were in water, some were on land. It's like my own little nightmare scenarios.
Rifkin painstakingly covered up his crimes in 3s. He researched past crimes for details.
Water is harder to investigate than land because it washes everything.
The killer in Atlantic City may have known that as well. The victims were discovered face down in several inches of water. Key evidence washed away. Rifkin adds, that's no coincidence.
Since there's 4 in one place, he's probably comfortable with the area.
When I asked if he thought the killer or killers in these latest cases would commit murder again,
Yeah. I don't have any doubts.
What about the women that you killed? Was there a thought about lives that you took? Families that you ruined?
You lie to yourself. You deny that there's a family. You deny that there's parents and possibly kids.
throughout his
Good luck, buddy. You're not going to get any parole. Little sets of 3, vermin, drug addicted. You're dehumanizing these women. That's all you're doing. You're just dehumanizing. I do agree with him that these people, once they get the euphoria, once they get that charge and that high, they don't stop. They don't stop.
trial and his incarceration, Joel Rifkin still cannot explain one thing. Why?
I don't know. I don't know. Why do people try to quit smoking for their entire lives?
would you have killed again if you weren't caught?
As much as they say I wanted to stop, there probably would have been others.
The courts sentenced Joel Rifkin to more than 200 years in prison, making any chance of parole impossible. Mary Calvi, CBS 2 News.
And last I heard, he's serving these 200 plus years on Rikers Island. Doesn't matter what he says, he has no chance of parole. None whatsoever. I mean, just look at his face. Wait till they talk to old Rex. Gonna be insane. All right, over the weekend, Dr. Grande weighed in. And I want to go through part of what he said. I'm going to put the link in here so you guys can subscribe, or however you want to do it, or not subscribe. I don't care. Just making sure you know this is not my content. I am not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. Diva said he is scary AF. Yes, he is. Joel Rifkin is something else, and he terrorized that city. Listen to Dr. Grande's summation on Rex.
Rex Heuermann was born in 1964 and grew up in Massapequa Park, which is on Long Island in New York. His father was an aerospace engineer. In 1981, Rex graduated from Berner High School in Massapequa. In 1990, he married an office supply company executive. Rex had a daughter and a stepson. In 1994, Rex established his own company called RH Consultants and Associates. He worked as an architect. Much of his work was related to helping clients navigate New York City codes and negotiating with the buildings department. Rex lived in the same house where he grew up. The house was described by neighbors as a dump with overgrown shrubs and wood in the front yard. Rex was not friendly toward or well liked by his neighbors. Between 2014 and 2022, Rex filed 4 lawsuits in New York against drivers who he claimed had hit him with their vehicles. Rex complained of serious and permanent personal injuries.
So he's filing personal injury lawsuits. His place is a dump. They have codes there. The neighbors weren't, I wouldn't say they were too fond of him. They're trying to keep their property up, and I don't know what he's doing. I would think he would be more meticulous than that. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen it. It looked nice to me, but the neighbors just said he didn't keep his place up.
Between 2010 and 2021, Rex was the subject of 6 tax liens filed by the IRS. He had owed over $425,000 and repaid about half of it by 2022.
Again, he's hiding in plain sight. The IRS was after his ass. Now, that's one agency you're not going to get off you. You don't ever want the IRS after you. I don't want them to owe me, and I don't want to owe them. It's never a good feeling.
Now moving to the timeline of the alleged crimes. On May 2, 2010, a 24-year-old woman named Shannon Gilbert went missing while she was engaged as a sex worker in Oak Beach, New York. This is about 20 miles from Massapequa Park. Shannon had made a call to 911 at 4:51 a.m. after fleeing from a client's home. She told the operator that somebody was after her and trying to kill her. In December 2010, while searching for Shannon, the police found the remains of 4 other women. All of the women were sex workers. They became known as the Gilgo Beach 4. 25-year-old Maureen Brainerd Barnes was last seen in July 2007. 24-year-old Melissa Bartholomew went missing in July 2009. 22-year-old Megan Waterman went missing in June 2010. And 27-year-old Amber Costello went missing in September 2010. Between March and April of 2011, the police found 6 additional sets of remains, 4 women, a female toddler, and an adult male. The police believe that the murders were carried out by the same offender. This unknown killer was referred to by many names, including the Long Island serial killer and the Craigslist Ripper. In December 2011, the police found the remains of Shannan Gilbert in a marsh in Oak Beach. Investigators believe that she was not murdered by the Long Island serial killer. So her death led to the discovery of these murders, but she was not part of that group. The investigation into the Gilgo Beach murders went on for many years without success. In January 2022, the police made a renewed effort to investigate the murders and would make an important discovery about 2 months later, on March 14. A witness to the disappearance of Amber Costello had identified a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche as a vehicle which may have been operated by the killer. The police realized that a black Chevrolet Avalanche had been registered to Rex Heuermann at the time of Amber's murder. Investigators decided to take a closer look at Rex and used over 300 subpoenas, search warrants, and other legal processes to obtain evidence. On July 13, 2023, the police arrested 59-year-old Rex Heuermann in Midtown Manhattan. He was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of second-degree murder in connection with the deaths of Melissa Barthélemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. The authorities said that Rex is the prime suspect in the death of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and they expect to resolve this case soon. It sounds like Rex is in store for further charges. Rex pleaded not guilty and was ordered to be held without bail. He is facing multiple terms of life in prison without the possibility of parole if convicted. Now moving to my announcement.
Now, it's no shock that he pled not guilty. I am shocked that he has a public defender. I figured Rex would, with his connections, and don't think he doesn't have any connections unless the connections won't have anything to do with him, would get a private attorney. I was shocked by that. He has equity, he has money, he has savings, so I'm very surprised he has a public defender. It might just be for his initial appearance. I don't know.
Analysis. Rex's attorney called the case against his client extremely circumstantial. He said that Rex was in tears and said, "I didn't do this." The state obviously feels differently. They believe Rex is guilty and that the evidence against him is overwhelming. This brings me to the question, is Rex the notorious Long Island serial killer? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that Rex Heuermann is guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. Rex lived in Massapequa Park. The victims were believed to have disappeared from this area. The police found evidence connecting Rex to burner cell phones, which were used to contact the victims. Maureen Brainerd Barnes was contacted using a burner cell phone on July 6, 2007. The last known location of her phone was in Midtown Manhattan. Again, Rex worked in Midtown Manhattan. Melissa Barthélemy disappeared on July 10, 2009. She was contacted that day by a burner cell phone which traveled from Massapequa Park to Midtown Manhattan, so the area where Rex lived to the area where he worked. Later that same day, Melissa's cell phone traveled from Midtown Manhattan to Massapequa Park. A few times in July and August, Melissa's phone was used to place taunting calls to her sister. The caller admitted to being the killer. Melissa's phone was in Midtown Manhattan, very close to the office that Rex used when these calls were placed. Megan Waterman was contacted by a burner cell phone on June 5, 2010. She disappeared the next day. The last known location of her cell phone was Massapequa Park, not far from the house where Rex lived. Amber Costello was contacted by a burner cell phone on September 1, 2010. This phone connected to cell towers in West Amityville and Massapequa Park before traveling to West Babylon near Amber's residence. Late on September 1 or early on September 2, a male client showed up at Amber's residence. Amber perpetrated a scam on this client. She had somebody pretend to be her outraged boyfriend and chase the client off while she kept the client's money. The male client was described as looking like an ogre, having dark bushy hair. wearing 1970s style glasses, and driving a Chevrolet Avalanche.
Sounds like Rex to me. Bushy hair, outdated glasses. It seems like all the serial killers go to lens crafters for the same look. And guess who drives a Chevy Avalanche? Mr. Selfie himself. Yes, my friends.
The burner cell phone that had been used to contact Amber initially was used to send a text message to her after she perpetrated the scam. Within 2 minutes of sending that message, the phone was in Massapequa Park. Later on September 2, the same burner phone was used to contact Amber from Midtown Manhattan. The phone traveled to Massapequa Park, then to West Babylon. Amber was seen walking out of her residence for the last time. A cell phone possessed by Rex had been used in some of the same areas where calls were made from burner phones and had some of the same travel patterns as some of the burner phones. Rex was connected to some of the burner cell phones because he accessed email accounts that were connected to the phones. He was also captured on video at a cell phone store in Midtown Manhattan buying additional minutes for one of the burner phones. Investigators found a curious pattern as far as the timing of the murders and the travel of Rex's wife. This made it seem like Rex committed the murders when his wife was out of town. Rex's wife was in Iceland when Melissa was killed. She was in Maryland when Megan was murdered, and she was in New Jersey when Amber was killed. Rex used an email account to conduct several internet searches. He appeared to have an interest in individuals under the age of 18, sex workers, and sadism. Rex also made searches related to serial killers, the Gilgo Beach 4, and the investigation into the Long Island serial killer. For example, he searched, why hasn't the Long Island serial killer been caught? Why could law enforcement not trace the calls made by the Long Island serial killer? And unsolved serial killer cases.
Now, his searches, just gonna say, look a lot like mine. Not gonna lie, but I'm not a serial killer. But Big Sweaty was definitely keeping up with the news. As we know, some serial killers keep a scrapbook. Before there was the internet, people were getting newspapers, and they would clip it out. They would keep track of their own case through the media. Another reason why police don't really like to say too much. Yet you have people that have no skin in the game go, well, they should tell us more. They should tell us more. They don't want your help.
Hair found on 3 of the victims was matched to Rex's wife. The police have not suggested in any way that she was involved in the crimes.
No, she was in Iceland, Maryland, and New Jersey for 3 of the murders. Now, I don't know where she was when Maureen was killed or when Shannon was killed. Not sure if he's connected to Shannon. Maureen, he's the prime suspect. It's going to be interesting to know where his wife was.
Rex's wife was out of town during the murders. The police believe that Rex transferred his wife's hair to the victims. Rex's DNA matched a male hair found on Megan Waterman. Moving to the exculpatory factors, there are no witnesses to the murders, no video. Another person who traveled between Massapequa Park and Midtown Manhattan could have been the one who used the burner cell phones, which were not directly connected to Rex. The Gilgo Beach 4 selected a hazardous occupation. They had contact with many potentially dangerous clients. Rex may have used their services, but somebody else could have killed them. That's pretty much it for exculpatory factors. When considering the evidence, do I think that Rex is guilty? Yes, I believe he is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. However, at the time making this video, he maintains the presumption of innocence. Moving to the next section, here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1, based on information available about the investigation, it appears as though the breakthrough in this case came from the police discovering something which was already in evidence. Presumably, they knew about the witness report of a Chevrolet Avalanche for many years. Some people have been critical of the investigators in this case. It is reasonable to believe that the initial investigation was badly mishandled. I think this failed initial investigation speaks to how difficult it can be to solve a case when there is a lot of evidence. The data can become overwhelming to law enforcement. Item number 2, what are some of the potential personality traits of Rex Heuermann? Rex has been described as angry, unfriendly, adversarial, fastidious, arrogant, cold, distant, and kind of creepy. According to a man who attended the same high school, Rex was bullied as a teenager. Rex was once forced to leave a Whole Foods store for taking fruit that was put out for children and arguing with store employees who confronted him. Neighbors.
Entitled. He's at Whole Foods and he's taken the fruit that's meant for the kids and he gets into an argument. He's got IRS problems. He's suing people for personal injury, going to work every day. He wasn't hiding. I really think when they talked about the Chevy Avalanche, they should have done it Idaho style and scoured the area. Get a hold of the DMV. We need to find out where all these Chevy Avalanches are.
Indicated that Rex was not approachable, and he would menace people by chopping wood with an axe in the front yard of his house. He would respond to people greeting him by glaring at them before continuing to chop wood. Rex repeatedly used the services of sex workers. This appeared to be a major part of his life. The internet searches made by Rex make him appear sadistic, and of course the murder part is consistent with that theory as well. Rex appeared to pay attention to detail. He worked diligently to hide his connection to the murder victims. Ultimately, he failed, but he did manage to evade the authorities for over a decade. Rex had a line of work which was very connected to details. He took pride in knowing old building codes. It would appear as though Rex had a few obsessive-compulsive personality traits. He appeared to be preoccupied with details and rules. For example, he was interested in boring building codes and described as fastidious. Rex was rigid and stubborn, and he may have had a miserly spending style. For example, his house was in disrepair, and he allegedly took fruit from a store. The behavior demonstrated by Rex is also consistent with having narcissistic and psychopathic traits. For example, he was arrogant, sadistic, antagonistic, argumentative, irresponsible, and allegedly committed a series of crimes. This takes me to the last item, number 3. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. At some point, Rex started obsessing about sexual domination fantasies. He engaged in a lifestyle involving frequent, financially induced casual sexual encounters.
This really reminds me of BTK. He had a lot of fantasies. Ted Bundy said the same thing. They have fantasies that no human could meet. Now, BTK didn't get he didn't get any sex workers. But a normal, the normal relationship between Rex and his wife, she couldn't ever meet these needs. And I have a feeling he would never bring up to her what he wanted to do. I have a feeling when she was out of town, he brought these women to his house. If you look at where their phones pinged, they weren't too far from his house. Now, I don't know if they were told to turn their phone off before they get there. I don't know how that went down because they weren't pinged at the house, if you know what I mean. And then I think once everything was done, he went and got rid of them. I just don't think this happened at the beach.
But this wasn't enough. He committed his first murder after casual sexual encounters, but this wasn't enough. He committed his first murder after resisting the urge for many years. It was highly satisfying to him, everything he had hoped for. He continued killing. Rex had a particularly dangerous combination of traits which allowed him to be a prolific serial killer. The narcissism and psychopathy gave him the desire to commit the murders, and the obsessive-compulsive traits facilitated an attention to detail that assisted him in evading detection. Rex believed that he was intelligent and disciplined enough to commit the murders without getting caught. He was reasonably cautious much of the time and carefully planned his actions. Rex tried to maintain a semblance of a normal life. He was married and regularly went to work. Most people found him to be strange, but did not think that he was a killer. After committing several murders, Rex started obsessing about getting caught. He made numerous searches in order to put his mind at ease, but he did not feel safe. He just kept coming back to that same thought of being arrested. He stopped committing homicides, but continued to employ the services of sex workers. He was willing to give up some of his enjoyable activities, but not all of them. This pattern of discontinuing serial homicide is not unheard of. For example, Joseph James D'Angelo, the Golden State Killer, eventually stopped committing murders on his own. Joseph was not arrested until years after his last murder. Rex did not realize that he had already made the mistake that would later lead to his identification. His vehicle was spotted when he arranged another meeting with Amber after she perpetrated a scam on him. His impulsivity led to his undoing. Rex believed that he was justified in committing the murders, or he had forgiven himself. This is why he was able to cry for his lawyer and claim his innocence. In Rex's mind, he is truly without blame. Now moving to my final thoughts. Rex Heuermann laid the foundation for success by learning to be an architect. Unfortunately, he was engineered with dark desires, which paved the way for murder. He went back to the drawing board and constructed a facade to disguise his design flaw. Rex tried to avoid inspection, but his concrete thinking did not create an environment of sustainability. He could not insulate himself from a code violation. Ultimately, Rex became an architect of agony. Those are my thoughts in the case of Rex Heuermann. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for
Great analysis. And I like how Dr. Grande actually has common sense. Do I think he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, he said? Yes, I do. You have the cell phone pings. Someone spotted and described him, his car, him. Absolutely. I like his common sense, because we see some of these psychiatrists, psychologists, whatever you want to call them, and they don't use their degree anywhere except for on YouTube. He actually has a job, if you know what I mean. And he doesn't go into this mental illness and stuff. All right, this was released on Eyewitness News, ABC, New York. Now, I don't know really what this proves, but I want to go through it with you guys. A woman shares a chilling voicemail left by the suspect. Check this out.
We're learning more tonight about the man accused of killing and dumping the bodies of at least 3 women along Gilgo Beach on Long Island. Neighbors and acquaintances are sharing stories about Rex Heuermann. One still had a voicemail message from the alleged serial killer. Eyewitness News reporter Anthony Carlo has that exclusive interview from Massapequa Park.
Yes, investigators spent much of the day searching Heuermann's home, checking to see if any mementos are trophies from his victims.
It's just really unsettling knowing that something like this literally hits so close to home.
Forensic
trophies and more. Please don't forget his internet searches. This guy was into something called CP and MP. Now, I do not go through my husband's internet history because I'm not worried about that. I just, I mean, just imagine all of this, his wife getting hit with all of this. So when she was in Iceland, He's suspected of killing Melissa. She's in Maryland. He's suspected of killing Megan. She's in Jersey. He's suspected of killing Amber. Just imagine. My God. And the kids.
Investigators in and out of a home that neighbors say always looked a little out of place next to the perfectly manicured lawns in Massapequa Park.
This one, just you always looked at it and it looked a little creepier, weird.
The man who lived there, now a suspected killer.
It was a really hot day out and he was outside in overalls chopping wood in the driveway.
Cassandra Wickard had spoken to Rex Heuermann when he was just her neighbor.
He talked to us about how he does woodworking and building furniture, and his father used to build furniture.
His life as a husband, a father, and an architect seemed ordinary.
Hey, this is Rex.
Just like this voicemail obtained exclusively by Eyewitness News.
Yeah, I had a question for you.
I assumed he just wanted to do some work together, but he always made me a little bit uncomfortable.
I also wanted to touch base.
Dominique Vidal says Heuermann left her that message in late February. When she left a networking group for architects and designers, she says they were both in. Heuermann apparently up until his arrest Thursday. She recalls some of their now chilling past conversations.
And then he asked me if I knew about the Gilgo Beach murders. And back then, I was like, oh, you know, he's just from that area. But now I just see it as a serial killer, kind of just putting it in somebody's face.
Yeah, I think he was leading certainly a double life.
Investigators say Heuermann's obsessive web searches about the case, his use of burner phones, and DNA extracted from pizza crust helped tie him to the murders of 3 women, making him a prime suspect for a 4th.
He definitely bifurcated his life as to, what he did behind closed doors and what the public saw.
Law enforcement now with a full DNA sample can determine if any of the other Gilgo Beach murders can be connected to Heuermann. He's pleading not guilty. In Massapequa Park, Anthony Carlo, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Yeah, I'd be a little freaked out too if the prime suspect was reaching out to me, leaving creepy voicemails. He's got kind of a off-putting voice, and out of the blue asked me if I'd heard about these murders. And like she said, well, I just assumed he's from the area and just wondered. But now, in hindsight, imagine how freaked out she is. All right, leave it to good old News Nation. Leave it to News Nation. I knew it was going to happen. I knew it was going to come out. I didn't expect it to be so soon. But they want to know about his mental health. Miss me with that shit. This is not a mental health problem. This man is well educated, well spoken, had a very good career, as did his wife. We can't all travel to Iceland and take the vacations that she took. I'm going to play it here, save you guys the trouble. His mental health, people need to get off that dick. I'm really tired of it. Really tired of it.
Profile of the Gilgo Beach killer made in 2011 chillingly matches many of the very traits of the suspect now in custody behind bars in Suffolk County, New York. Rex Heuermann is charged with first-degree murder in the killings of 3 women whose bodies were discovered along the beach in December of 2010. He is now the prime suspect in the death of a 4th woman as well. Heuermann is married with 2 children. He works as an architect in Manhattan, or at least he did, and he lives about 15 miles from Gilgo Beach. A neighbor says he kept to himself, but he was shocked to learn an alleged serial killer was living 2 doors away from him.
He was a recluse, very antisocial, very quiet. He would walk past my house every morning because he would take the train to the city, and I would take the train as well because I work in the city. And he would walk past the house, never said hello or anything like that. Never paid any really much mind to it because, looking back at it now, you never know, like these people would be living right next door to you.
And now that he's in custody, police describe him as an ogre and a demon. I want to bring in Dr. Scott Bond, now a criminologist, author, and producer. He created a profile on the Long Island serial killer more than a decade ago in 2011. And you can check out videos about this case on his TikTok at RealDocBond. Dr. Bond, thank you for being with us. So you created this profile, and as we see and hear more about this suspect now in custody, it matches up pretty significantly. How did you do that?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on today. And the way this process works is it all starts with the crime scene evidence available. And what you do is you look at those details and then you match them to serial killer cases that have already been solved. And you look for indications of these incidents. And what we know is that when you have evidence like this, where these bodies were found meticulously bound and
Okay, let's go through this. Clues: suspect's wife's hair found on 3 of the victims. Use burner phones for sadistic torture-related searches. DNA from discarded pizza crust used to identify Rex as a suspect. Suspect's wife was out of state and out of the country when 3 of the victims disappeared.
Carefully placed on the beach, that this is going to be a highly organized individual. And that, again, that comes from looking at past cases. And as soon as I heard about this, I believed that this would be an individual who was probably a professional, a white male, likely a family man, who was very organized in his demeanor and his behavior. And it's interesting, one of his co-workers has just said that she thought he was a very organized individual, and he even himself described himself as tolerant and patient, which is also required when you do this sort of terrible activity.
I know a lot of organized people who aren't out killing multiple people. So I think that's what's so chilling about this, Dr. Bond, is that even as you heard the neighbor describe him, no one thinks that somebody is going to do what he is accused of doing. So you talk about serial killers, and I've heard them described as extraordinarily ordinary by outward appearances. Would you agree with that?
Well, it can be. There's really two types of serial killers. There's the organized kind, which he falls into the category of, very similar to a John Wayne Gacy or a Ted Bundy, or for that matter, Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer. Then you also have the disorganized, and that's an individual who is more like a wild animal and just blitzes their victims. And the classic example of that is actually Jack the Ripper, who just tore women to shreds back in the 19th century. This guy is not that. I believe he's a psychopath. I believe he's a misogynist. And these women, although they were sex workers, I think this is important to point out, Marnie, I do not believe at all that sex was the primary motive here. I think power, domination, and control, the desire to determine who, what, when, where, how, and why dies at his hand was his ultimate goal. In fact, he was playing God. And that's why he tortured and tormented Melissa Barthelomew's sister, called her and said, I have your sister. I've raped her. I'm doing these things, terrible things to her. This was part of playing God. It was like a cat playing with a mouse, and he was enjoying himself to the fullest. I think he's a narcissist, a malignant narcissist, which means a sadistic narcissist, and a psychopath.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation.
And the headline was about his mental illness. Did mental illness weigh in? I knew it was going to come up. I'm surprised Jennifer Coffendaufer wasn't in there. And what he brought up, we spoke about in many other cases. And this is what Ted Bundy, BTK, Dahmer, Many of them, the dark triad personality, have been, I'm just going to say, diagnosed with. This is very interesting. I'm going to put the link up if anybody wants to come up and talk about this. Tell me what you think. No remorse, no empathy. We heard Joel Rifkin. We heard what he said. He has this personality. Now, Dr. Lewis would say this personality does not exist, but it does.
In psychology, the dark triad represents 3 personality traits: narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. If we were to ask the 3 who has the darkest personality, the narcissist would say, me. The psychopath would say, I don't care. And the Machiavellian would say, it's whoever I want it to be. People scoring high on the 3 traits are more likely to commit crimes and create severe social problems in society, families, and organizations. This is why the research on the dark triad is used widely in law enforcement, psychology, and business. Here is an overview of what we know. The narcissist displays grandiosity, entitlement, and superiority, and wants nothing more than admiration. Once he gets what he wants, the narcissist is rarely interested in other people. When he does care, it's to enhance his status, which is why he likes to mingle with successful others. They seem as though they're completely in love with themselves, but at the root of their inflated egos are often deeply held feelings of inferiority. To protect their constructed self, they can never admit to being wrong, which is why they lie or blame others.
And I have a feeling he has a lot of narcissistic tendencies. If you've ever known a narcissist, somehow, even when they, which most of the time it's them, mess up, somehow they become the victim. They have a different way of looking at themselves. They want the world. They lie. They'll tell you they had a baseball scholarship, but only played Little League. It's crazy. They want the world to see them the way they feel.
Machiavellians are unprincipled, cold, and have a cynical view of other human beings. They like money, power, and winning, and they use manipulation to get what they want or exploit others. If manipulation doesn't work, they steal or betray. Those high on the spectrum believe it's better to be feared than being liked, and offend others as a strategy to control them. When you are a psychopath, you come across as cold, and others think you are scary. You also show little to no fear, act impulsively, and you enjoy mental thrills. Those high on the spectrum don't form any emotional bonds. The result is a complete lack of compassion. That means they have no problem being mean. If something terrible happens, they later often don't feel any remorse or guilt. The research tells us that men score significantly higher on all 3 compared to women. And while these 3 personalities are empirically distinct, they do overlap. Clinically, both narcissism and psychopathy are regarded as mental disorders, while Machiavellianism isn't. Whether nature or nurture is responsible for these traits has been somewhat answered by twin studies that show that narcissism and psychopathy have substantial genetic components. Machiavellianism seems to be less prevalent in pairs of twins. However, the environment also matters. A psychopath may not only pass down his genes, but influence a child by being a role model. A Machiavellian father shares with his son not only genetic material, but might also show him all his tricks. The son of a narcissist not only gets his dad's chromosomes, but may also experience his perfectionism. With the big 5 personality traits, also known as ocean, the 3 correlate either positively or negatively. narcissists and psychopaths are often open to new ideas and extroverted. Psychopaths and Machiavellians have low conscientiousness. All three personality types score low on agreeableness, and psychopaths are hardly neurotic. Whatever happens leaves them cold. An evolution.
A psychopath, even though they're a psychopath, well, like what Rex allegedly has done, it's well thought out. He already said he's tolerant, he's patient, and he understands people. These are his words. So he knows how to manipulate his wife. He knows how to manipulate the kids. It's a very, very scary thing.
Evolutionary explanation for these traits could be sexual strategy. Many of us pursue a slow life, invest in long-term relationships, have a few children, and spend time on parenting. Dark triad traits may have survived because they look to optimize a fast life. Their ancestors lived in an unpredictable and dangerous world. Because of a shorter life, they sought many sexual partners, spent no time on parenting, and did not invest in human relationships. This may also explain why they strive in competitive environments, such as corporations. Here, a Machiavellian may use charm and insults to manipulate others. The narcissist is physical appearance, and a psychopath, physical threats. And since they all lack compassion, they often elbow their way to the top, which is maybe why all three dark traits are well represented in upper-level management. But there are also downsides. If your mind was programmed to be impulsive, aggressive, and selfish, you are also more likely to abuse drugs, feel excluded, suffer from depression, or end up in jail. This is why we may not only find ways to protect ourselves from these darker minds, but also have empathy for them. After all, maybe they didn't choose to be that way. What about you? Did you inherit some dark triad traits? And if that's the case, and if you are aware of them, did you develop strategies to cope with them? Share your thoughts in the comments below and read the description to dig deeper and find relevant links, sources, and information.
Scary AF is what I call it. Scary AF. We're not talking about garden variety, anxious to go to work on Mondays because you just didn't get enough sleep over the weekend or had a little too much to drink on Saturday night. No, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about the weather turns cold and affects your mood. We're talking about pure evil. Now, of course, Dr. Lewis doesn't believe in evil. Let me tell you what, there is such a thing. And for the people that are wired this way, it's about control. It is about control. They want to control another person. Scary as hell, if you ask me. Very much. All right, don't forget, tomorrow morning, we have a members live. We're going to do it up and do it up right like we always do. This is going to be for the July babies, July birthdays. We're still going to be doing some true crime in there. Don't worry about it. We're going to have trivia. Get ready. Get your pencils ready. You know that's always fun. Always fun. And I appreciate each and every one of you for being here today. I know this is a tough subject. There's a lot of controversy with it. A lot of controversy. Because there are people out there that believe that, well, you know, you're a sex worker. That's what happens. No. 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 It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. So this has been a great show with great friends. I want to thank you guys for the gifted memberships. You guys are the best. Thank you for the donations to the channel. Without you, there would not be a channel. That is for sure. And I will see you over in Discord today. We're going to go through the 48 hours from several years ago. I can't do it on YouTube because it's copyrighted. but we can do it over on Discord and go through it together. I've reconfigured my schedule so we can get back to Movie Mondays. So if you'd like to come into Discord, send me an email and I will send you a link to come in, because it's a very informative show. You guys have a great rest of your day if I miss you in Discord or one of the Facebook groups. And I will see you back here, same time, same place. I will post it on the community tab. Please check the community tab when you can. Don't wait for it to pop up in your news feed. Like, actually go to it. And you'll see all the haps. You'll see what's going on. I will see you guys tomorrow morning. Thank you, Mod Squad. Thank you to everybody. You are the absolute best. And we're going to keep going into this. There is a lot to uncover with Rex and what he's been up to for 10 plus years. You guys have a great rest of your day. And I will see you back here. If I don't see you around the other places, I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Have a great one.